Mary Orvis Marbury attributed the general hooker to Sarah McBride. Sarah McBride was a self-taught etymologist and perhaps one of the first women to tie commercially. I am tying the fly from the illustration in Mary Orvis Marbury's book, Favorite Flies and Their Histories, which was published in 1892. I'm tying it on a number 6 straight shank straight eye hook with claret thread. I'm using claret thread because the illustration shows a red or claret head on the fly. I'm using bicolor tinsel. Mary would not have used mylar bicolor tinsel, but I'm using that in our contemporary tying materials to put a gold tag. So I tie it in with the gold side towards the hook, and then when I begin to wrap, I flip it so that the gold shows, and then I'm going to wrap that tinsel all the way down the hook shank because I want to make sure that I have as even a body as I am able. It is a floss body. In addition to attributing this fly to Sarah McBride, Mary Orvis suggests that the name could be either a Civil War general or a play on words, or maybe both, a general hooker. I'll just wrap that tinsel in the whole length of the shank. And I have some heavy green thread that I'm going to tie in for the rib. I'll tie that in on the bottom of the shank, and then when I wrap it, it'll pull out from underneath and I'll counter wrap. So take that back to where I have the tag. I'm going to go over that tag a little bit there. Bring my thread back to the front of the hook. I'm using a 2/0 floss for the body, doubled. So I folded it in half, tied it in by the fold, up by the eye, wrapped back over it, keeping it on top of the shank. And I keep it on top of the shank by pulling it forward just a little bit so that the thread wrap tension takes it up onto the top. And in the process, keeping that body flat, even, and bulk it up just a little bit. And then the 2 strands, I'll wrap those together and next to each other, and they should cover fairly evenly. The first thread lays down on the shank. The second one wraps up over the top of it, so there are really 2 layers of floss. And floss is a thread that is not twisted. It has all its fibers just laying next to each other rather than being twisted together as generally thread is. Not all thread, but usually thread is a number of fibers that have been twisted together. Floss is not twisted, so it lays down more evenly. And I'm not going to burnish this body or anything. I'm not tying this fly for competition. I'm just tying it to add to my list or my production, my challenge of tying the flies in Favorite Flies and Their Histories. Generally, I will wrap 3 times over the top of whatever it is I'm tying in. In this case, it's the floss. That catches it in, and then if I pull back up on that and wrap tight underneath of it, that will help to secure it. 2 or 3 wraps, and then I can clip off the extra. And I'm trying to leave plenty of space, at least a hook eye length behind the eye for the head. And I'll counter wrap the rib, and the counter wrapping makes sure that it doesn't bury itself between the wraps of whatever the body material is. And then again, I will catch that in 3 wraps up over the top. And then pull back on it and wrap tight underneath of it. And then I can clip that waist out as well. I'm using a light brown feather for the hackle. And this is a rooster feather, but it's taken from a little bit further back on the body, more what we might call a saddle feather, although it's not very long. But it's a little bit webbier, and I've just stripped off the barbs at the base. It's not a very long feather, so I'm going to grab it with my hackle plier. I've tied it in with the shiny side forward and out. That way when I wrap it, the barbs will tend to lean back towards the bend of the hook. And I just broke the tip off. Grab it again. Yep. Hackle plier doesn't want to stay on this feather. Okay, do that again. Just grab it again, wrap it. It's not a real full hackle. That's probably plenty. And again, I'll wrap 3 times up over the top of that feather to catch it in. And I can let go because it's caught in. I'll wet my fingers and then I'm going to pull back. I wouldn't do this on a contemporary dry fly, but I am going to do this on this traditional wet fly. And one more thing that Mary does say about it is that this is a caddis fly imitation. The dry fly craze hadn't come really to the United States yet when the book was written, and so these flies were fished wet. Maybe they started floating, but they soon waterlogged and were dragged through the water. The wing is a slate, so I'm going to take, we call this a quill wing. So I'm taking these barbs off of a secondary flight feather off of a water bird. I'm going to use 2 of those from opposing feathers, lay them back to back, pull them out so that they get a pointed tip, and then I want the tip to be about where the bend of the hook is. And also the quills are about the width of the hook gape. Hold that on top of the hook, pinch it together between the hackle barbs, and then do a pinch wrap. So I'll grab the thread with my finger and thumb, go down under the hook, and then lift up and cinch those feather barbs together. Do a couple more wraps to catch it in solidly. And that's my wing. And then I'm going to reach in carefully and cut out the butt ends. So really any feather that will give you this slate color will work, and it wouldn't have to be quite this dark. This particular fly, Mary did not leave any ingredients listed in her book, but it is a pretty classic fly. It's in Ray Bergman's book, I believe. So there are ingredients for it listed, but I'm tying off of the illustration and not off of somebody else's list of ingredients. And I've got some barbs sticking out down here. I'll turn it over and see if I can clip those out. This is butt ends from the wing here. Get those without grabbing the hackle fibers. Get those hackle barbs to bend back again. And pull back on everything and build the head. And the heads on the flies that Mary tied were fairly large, partly because of the ingredients that she tied in, but mostly because of the gut that she used. She didn't have eyes on her hooks, so a piece of gut, which was the inside of the silk moth caterpillar, the gland and its content, were used, twisted together to create a leader. A loop was put on the end of the leader to attach the fly line. Just push my scissors against the thread to cut it out. In a contemporary twist, I'm going to put a drop of diluted goop on that knot for the head cement. Stick a needle in my jar, grab a drop, and that'll soak in. It turns dark when it's wet, but when this dries, it will dry nice and clear. Number 6 hook has a fairly large eye. I'm not real concerned about it being dirty, but if you're concerned about your eyes being dirty, you can push a hackle feather through them and make sure that they are clean and tippet ready.